Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Smith for the Great Business Stories of St. Louis, and today I got Luke Chudy, who's joining me from his facility in St. Charles, Missouri. Luke, tell us about your company.
Yeah, essentially, we're a material technology company that is focused on architectural and structural applications of our material technology, which is structurally engineered bamboo. So essentially, our technology and everything that we've been developing for the past almost 20 years is put into this structural grade product. And then in this facility, we engineer it together on our 42-foot press. We sand it, we fabricate it on robotic machinery. A lot of it comes from Germany, but essentially raw slats come in one side and a structural grade product for architectural engineered applications within buildings and industrial applications is I can share a little bit more about that, but our focus is these architectural and structural applications.
You give us a few examples of architectural applications so everybody gets started off on the right foot here. So give us an example that the average person watching this may understand or may know.
Yeah, so many of you may be familiar, for example, with engineered wood. So
Right.
engineered wood comes in lots of different forms and formats. If you were to do a comparative, it would probably be most similar to what is called as a glulam,
Okay.
so which is a form of engineered wood. There's also other products like PSL, parallel strand lumber. You
Hmm.
have I-joist and LVL, laminated veneer
Hmm.
lumber. These are all
Hmm.
products that we use within the building industry from residential to commercial. Our products are considered exposed architectural grades. So they're meant to be exposed and to be seen. Um,
Okay.
but because the materials are inherently stronger and more durable in exterior applications, we have a little bit broader of an application, such as exterior grade. One of our largest, most showcase type projects that we've done is work with BMW for solar powered electric vehicle charging infrastructure. If
Okay.
you, we can share that later potentially as a link and a follow up. But essentially, structural grade, exterior grade applications, but then also glass. So from curtain wall, structural glass through roof glass, those types of applications within buildings as well.
Great. That's great to know. I'm sure everybody in the Midwest is going to ask this question. How did you get connected in the bamboo industry?
Yeah, yeah, I'll be as brief as I can because there is a
That's
little bit of a
fine.
story,
We
but
got time.
essentially, I was I'm pretty involved, with some various different mission work and things like that. And
Mm.
one
Okay.
summer, I went down to Honduras while I was in college studying architecture. I was going to
Okay.
Southern Illinois University, Carbondale.
Okay.
This is back in 2003, 2002.
Okay. Mhm.
And I went and did a construction missions trip down in Honduras. And during that trip, the entire focus for the trip was to essentially dig out a community, a whole little village that it
Mhm.
had been demolished by a landslide. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
very strange because this village was built by the Spaniards over 400 years ago, and
Oh,
just
wow.
only recent that this landslide completely covered the village. And so, growing up on a farm, I grew up on a farm in the Midwest of Illinois.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about, why all of a sudden this erosion that caused this landslide. And you look up, and right there you could see where this entire mountainside had been harvested, over harvested essentially, of all the old growth timber. Forest had
Okay.
been removed from that hill, likely sold to first world countries such as the US and Europe, hardwoods, exotics, teak, you know,
Mhm.
uh, Brazilian hardwoods,
Mhm.
walnut, those types of hardwood species
Mhm.
had been cut. And a lot of these trees, they take 1 to 200 years to grow. And essentially, when those trees are harvested, the soil system becomes quite unstable. And so
Okay.
essentially, that soil came and buried this town. And uniquely enough, also, when I was in that area, I also saw bamboo growing everywhere. And this was a species of bamboo called guadua, which when you hear
Okay.
that name, it sounds strange, but most people think of bamboo, they think of Asia. They think of China, Japan,
Right.
and
That's what I think of.
most people connect it with, like bamboo flooring and cutting boards and things like that.
Mhm.
But it turns out the highest performance species of bamboo in the world grows in Central and South America, as well as Mexico. So
Hmm.
this species called Guadua angusfolia is a species that was discovered over 200 years ago by a botanist named Angusfolia, a German botanist.
Okay.
And he discovered it, and it grows there naturally, all through the Amazon, all the way up into Central South America, South America, and then up into Central America, and even into Mexico. And it's
Hmm.
extremely prevalent, naturally growing amongst all of the forests. It can also be propagated onto farms, and it's been used, like I said, over 200 years in all kinds of applications for construction. A lot of concrete forming, various different applications in its raw form. And essentially, while I was in architecture school, I focused in on engineered products and how, if we're taking wood and we're engineering it together with all these US technologies, such as adhesive technology.
Right.
There's a company, for example, Weyerhaeuser, Georgia Pacific, Louisiana
Hmm.
Pacific. These companies have been manufacturing engineered products. Glulam is about 150-year-old technology. Engineered wood, such as LVL, that's about 40 years
Okay.
technology. And so
Gotcha.
in 2009, after I graduated college, I did some testing, 2007 through 2009, did some testing right here in St. Louis at a testing lab of of bamboo in its engineered form, and I made these beams actually out at the barn on the farm. And so what I did is I reached out to ASTM and presented to ASTM, to this executive committee, and this was global news. It was the first time in 40 years that a new structural material had been added to the standards. So officially in 2012, so think of this timeline from 2007 to 2012, I worked within those testing agencies and bodies to add in what is called SEB, structurally engineered bamboo. And
Okay.
so this was the first time in 40 years. And now, if you open up your IBC, International Building Code, from 2012 to now 2025, now most municipalities are referencing either 22 or 24. You'll
Hmm.
see structural engineered bamboo in the ASTM 5456, which was the engineered structural composite lumber division. And so that was a huge milestone because that doesn't happen just every day, obviously. And so from there, after our testing, we determined, yeah, this is a very high performance structural product. We took and built upon these adhesive technologies that have been used in the engineered wood industry, known for high performance in fire conditions, natural
Hmm.
flame retardants, type 1 exterior grade adhesives. All of our adhesives are exterior grade. So we implement this technology with this higher performance fiber resource. And so that's essentially our product.
Gotcha. So does it compete with wood or metal or fiberglass or all of them?
It really competes with about everything. One of the projects we've done recently is actually with a company called Amazon Robotics, where we're
Hmm.
replacing steel. We're going in and replacing various different forms of metal, mainly steel and aluminum. And, essentially, a lot of these companies have put out press releases where they're trying to reduce the amount of high energy consumption types of products, also with regards to carbon and all that, but mainly to integrate more renewable resources into their operations. And so
Right.
that's where we have a pretty strong division of our company that's focused on industrial applications as well.
All right, great. So we segued a little bit in and out of there. We talked about when you first started and what you get started. So when did your company officially start? When did you name it? When did you do all those things?
Yeah, so what we're standing in right here is the establishment of our company after moving from Illinois. So I established my
Okay.
first company in Illinois, and then I sold off a division of that company. It's focused on more like commodity type applications,
Okay.
non-structural. And then I
Okay.
moved the company, essentially the proprietary structural grade product division of the company, to Missouri in 2020 and formed a new entity called Renewtech Holdings here in St. Charles.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And so uh, tell us a bit about so at the AST, obviously that was a standards area that gets you in to be able to sell the products, what have you. So do you hold patents and licenses on those, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have quite a bit of proprietary technology.
Okay.
One of them specifically is a product called RadLam, radial laminated bamboo, where we take
Mhm.
the slats and we mill them in such a way to optimize the highest performance strength properties. And so that's one of our pieces of proprietary technology. And then we have a lot of different structural solutions as it relates to glass, a lot of very powerful partnerships with glass solution providers that you'll see in the construction industry, where our components are integrated seamlessly into those existing systems, such as curtain wall, roof glazing, and things like that.
Got you. Thank you. And thank you for all those who are listening. It's a little technical, but I think it's a very interesting product because we've not had any new, as you talked about, building materials that have been introduced in quite some time. And I think it's a great phenomenon that you have there. And I learned the bamboo. I always think about Asia as well because everything has always been kind of prolific over there. So when you started that company, so how many years have you been in business officially? And tell us a bit about, starting up. And you did tell us about how you got get approved, but tell us, some of some of the struggles that you have when you first started. You've been successful at it, but there's a lot of R&D that you had to do, obviously, and proprietary knowledge that you have that you probably didn't end up getting paid for up front. So tell us how that worked and how you went through your startup and then accelerated from there.
Absolutely. So with many industries, such as the steel and aluminum industries, you are essentially working off of a very well established supply chain, a
Right.
commodities type of market where you can get aluminum from about anywhere. A lot of it does still come from China, comes from different parts of the world. We have a lot of production in the United States as well. But when essentially established all of our processes, we had to establish our own supply chain. So we had to go and determine where we're going to source from. So essentially, we had to, get all those processes in place from the slats. So the bamboo is
Hmm.
harvested at a specific age, then it's dried to a certain moisture content, milled
Hmm.
and processed into bundles of slats. Those slats are then optimized various different forms of shipment process into the United States, into St. Louis, into our facility here, and then our operations here is strictly focused on the engineering process, the proprietary processes, from the adhesive to how we shape the slats and then how we mill them and laminate them into on our press out here. So yeah, I mean there were certainly some struggles, and you said about the timeline. This process essentially started right after I graduated college in 2003, and then in 2007 is when I formed my first kind of material technology company. And at that point, I was essentially doing a lot of testing and work just from understanding the structural properties. Did a lot of testing with various different universities. Worked with the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana with a couple different research projects and things like that. And then, as things progressed, I formed that first company and we did more kind of standard projects. But now, like you said, we've had some successes, and this facility that I'm standing in right now is the most advanced engineered product processing facility in the entire Midwest. Now, there are companies that are producing wood in various different formats, but most of those are the East and West Coast. And then some of them are in Canada, and some in
Hmm.
the southern states. But as far as the Midwest, you don't hear too much about actual producers of an engineered product. And so
Right.
when we're talking about that process, it was a major milestone to have our own operations where we're actually engineering the product together into our structural components.
Great. So I think about Andrew Carnegie, who owned the supply chain, right? So is this something where you went back to the places that you had been in Central and South America to get the supply chain going, or was other countries already purchasing this, or how did you get that whole supply chain set up so you're able to run effectively today?
Yeah, I mean, it happened in two phases. So I did my initial testing just from slats that I had gotten from like a nursery, just pieces of
Right.
bamboo, and then dried them
Hmm.
and then milled them. And
Hmm.
then as I understood more about all the different species, now when you hear someone say bamboo, you think in your mind, well, this is supposed to be like a species. It's like all bamboo is the same, but it's just as diverse as wood species. So if
Right.
I said I was going to build a house out of balsa wood, And
Right.
then you said, well, maybe not. Maybe you should build it out of southern
Mhm.
yellow pine or cedar or oak or
Right.
something.
Right.
These all have drastically different structural properties. The same is the
Right.
case for bamboo. So, a lot of the infrastructure as it relates to bamboo is indeed in China. That is where the flooring industry, the cutting board industry, the cabinetry, casework. The
Mhm.
challenge is, though, with bamboo that comes from Asia, it's called MOSO, MOSO, is that it's non-structural. The modulus elasticity is way too low, so the structural capacity is very low, and it has too much sugar in it. Just like how we would
Okay.
not build with balsa wood or something here.
Right.
It's more of like a furniture grade type of, or flooring
Okay.
grade type of bamboo. So that was the first kind of hurdle, is to understand which which species are we even going to work with. And you know fortunately, there's been a lot of global research over the last 20
Right.
plus years about different bamboo species. And one
Right.
species just kept always coming up to the top as far as performance, and that's this guadua species out of Central and South
Yes.
America. And so,
Gotcha.
yes, we had to go down. We have our own operations, proprietary processes down in Colombia, Ecuador, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and we're continuing to diversify that supply chain as well. But they all process according to our specification.
Now the bamboo that you have, what I understand about bamboo, which is very little, is a bamboo is a renewable. It grows faster than trees, etc. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it's technically a grass. That's what's the big difference. And when
Okay.
we added it into the ASTM, the American Society of Testing Materials,
Mhm.
technically, though this is structural composite lumber or timber wood
Mhm.
species. So we had to
Mhm.
overcome, well, technically, the phylum and the genus and species, this is a grass. But
Mhm.
what allowed us to add it into the standard is that it's based on the silica content versus cellulose content. And if you
Okay.
have a certain level of silica content, then it's considered a structural based composite material. And so we were able to essentially modify the engineered wood standard to include SEB, structural engineered bamboo. And so, yes, it's extremely renewable. We're talking about a species, essentially guadua, that replaces its own biomass every year, about
Oh,
six
wow.
times the amount of material. And growing up on a farm, I like to use this analogy. If
Mhm.
you were to take 1 acre of land, we're all familiar with how big an acre is,
Right. Right.
and you grow that in southern yellow pine, in about 30 years, you'll get 8 tons of usable fiber on that 1 acre of land that's usable. There's a lot of waste.
Yeah.
Over 30% waste is smaller limbs, and
Right.
you're cutting around tree trunks, so there's lots of waste because we're cutting rectangular components out of a round tree, and
Right.
then you have the bark and everything. So about 70 to 60% of the tree is usable, and so 8 tons of usable fiber. The rest of it can be chipped up into other products, of course, like OSB or other particle board types of products. But we're talking about structural grade product, about 8 tons. If you were to take that
Yeah.
same acreage of land and grow that in guadua bamboo, you get 14 tons of usable fiber every 6 years. And the first
Okay.
analogy as it relates to timber is every 30 years. You have to clear
Mhm.
cut, like I said before, then the soil degradation happens. You have to replant the trees. The root
Mhm.
system of bamboo stays in place. So it's putting up new culms of
Okay.
bamboo every year that can be harvested. And so it's
Okay.
an ongoing harvest process. So 14 tons of usable fiber every 6 years versus 8 tons of usable fiber every 30 years. So it's about 6 times the amount of biomass per acre. So the renewability case study is very significant.
Gotcha. And they're not clear cutting like they did the hardwood you talked about where the landslide happened, etc. So very good. So thanks for telling us about the nuts and bolts of your business and how that technology got started. I think it really deserved its time. Um, what do you see your business doing in the next 5 years? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, so the most exciting piece I would say is a market that we were not even planning on getting into. At first I said architectural and structural, then we were approached by BMW, and now all of a sudden we're doing EV charging infrastructure, which is amazing,
Mhm.
solar powered structures. Now we've been approached, and we've already completed a lot of prototyping for data center infrastructure. And we're
Oh,
talking about
wow.
server racking and the actual componentizing
Wow.
of the structural elements that build up the data center. And the reason is because, as you know, we're seeking in this country massive amount of demand towards this data center infrastructure. And as a
Right.
country, are we just going to build all that out of steel and concrete and these high energy resource types of materials, or
Right.
can we use more renewable resources? So this is something, we haven't officially launched it yet, but we've actually already done a ton of work since actually the spring of 2022 with a company called Vertiv, which is one of the largest server racking manufacturers in the world. And we have been working with several others as well to build this type of componentry that go into data centers.
That is so interesting. That's a place that none of us would have ever thought about when we first dialed up here on the call, right? Server racks and the server business. So a lot of companies that are out there growing in that area. So you see new uses of new markets coming in that area. Um, go ahead.
Absolutely. But I'll retract and say that our business model is exactly the same. All our business is to manufacture our proprietary product
Mhm.
and then componentize it, fabricate it, finish it according to spec. We parallel it with various different steel plates and hardware bolts and things like that to bolt it together. But rather it's an architectural structural system, EV charging, or even a data center module, server racking, it's all the exact same business. That's why we've focused in on our fabrication infrastructure with a lot of automation and a lot of robotics out here. So, for example, one of our robots is about 70 foot long that essentially it's like a CNC, but it's huge. We can cut
Mhm.
very large beams all based on a computer program. And we
Mhm.
have smaller CNCs as well. So it's an operation that is extremely efficient for the fabrication and finishing portion as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like you have the manufacturing process done. So all the hard details come before that program is approved, right? And it starts cutting on the material, which is costly in the machines. So tell us a
That's
little bit
right.
about your intake process. So give us an example of a client, how they come and engage with you.
Yeah, I think the most interesting, and it's kind of a personal story, is right in the middle of the pandemic. In order, because the entire industry shut down. Like I said, I
Hmm.
was moving my company from Illinois to Missouri,
Hmm.
and in order to kind of keep things cash flowing for myself and keep things simple, I actually signed up as a contract delivery driver for Amazon Flex. And I don't know if you're
Hmm.
familiar with it, but because of our leadership position in the industry for this technology in the world, when Amazon went searching out to find this sustainable materials technology that's certified and tested per ASTM standards, they found my company. And while I was
Oh,
actually
wow.
delivering packages for Amazon Flex, I actually got a call from Amazon corporate asking, "Hey, we have this robotics project. We want to integrate your materials into it." And I tell that story out of pure humility that during the pandemic was a difficult time for everyone. And
Mhm.
by keeping things moving forward, not just shutting things down and kind of continue to drive forward, I became familiar with an industry that we would later become heavily involved in. And while we were in the communications with Amazon Robotics, they asked, "Are you familiar with our distribution infrastructure?" And I could actually say, "I'm actually pretty familiar with it because I was working in that space." So you ask about how we get our business. We do not necessarily need to market that much. We don't necessarily have salespeople running across the country. The
Right.
companies that are serious, the engineering professionals that are within these companies, when they search and they do their due diligence, just like what
Right.
BMW did, what Amazon did, what some of these other players are doing, they find that there's only essentially one USA company for sure. Now, there's other
Okay.
companies around the world that are claiming to engineered bamboo, but the only one in the United States that actually is certified per US standardization and testing requirements, to where an engineer who's specifying the design, the product, can actually rely on the values that they're getting. That's the problem when you are sourcing materials from different parts of the world. they may state that there's certain structural capacities, but unless they're in direct compliance under third-party auditing, under their process to state that they have a certain structural capacity, it's very difficult to rely on that data. So companies such as Amazon, other major players, they want to see that you have the operations in the United States. They want to understand that you're in compliance with all the standardization. And so that's how all of 90% of our incoming business comes. The other area
That's
is
great.
architects. Architects, it's kind of similar, but I do present at a lot of architectural firms.
Okay.
Um, we uh, we actually hosted an event recently here with Jacobs Engineering, and there was people from HOK and SOM out here at our
Yeah.
facility where we presented alongside Jacobs and some of these major players. The other side too is for developers. When developers are seeking to build out something, for example, Gateway South, we have this big
Mhm.
development south of the bridge there. Some of our partnerships within our company are also investors and involved with Gateway South. So if they're
Gotcha.
building that out, of course they would want to integrate sustainable materials. That was the first push. But then when they realize that there's mutual benefit to the project, they're also going to integrate our materials as well. So there's some nice regional synergies as well.
Great. So, you're not that far. Well, you in college, you helped, you pretty much started your business. So, those aspiring young entrepreneurs that are watching this, tell us a little bit about advice you would give them. What's the one piece of advice you'd give them after learning everything you did? Obviously, you went down to you did a you did a trip, foreign trip. If you saw something, tell us a little bit about that path. What you recommend to them? What's advice you would give to them?
Yeah, I think it's very simple. If you are passionate about something, which I became very passionate about, advancing a material technology, I would just say that whatever it is, if there's some idea that you have, ensure that it actually betters society. Does it indeed solve a problem? And you've heard all this before by other
Right.
people, I'm sure, but more importantly, you personally have to really believe in it. There'll be other people, potential competitors at some point. Right now, like I said, we are the industry leader, but even if someone may have lots of cash, unless they personally are directly driven by what they're doing, the technology, and they take it
Mhm.
as a joyful endeavor, essentially, I don't see it as work. I take a lot of pride and joy in bringing forth this material technology. So unless you're completely passionate about it, there's no way that you'll be able to withstand all of the challenges, the pandemics, the people who say, we've got other materials, or we're going to stick with aluminum, and all of the difficulties along the way. And as long as you have the grit, you've heard that as well, to kind of weather those challenges and not, just kind of give up. There's going to be so many opportunities to give up, obviously, and so to stay with it, and then eventually people will recognize the technology. You'll be recognized as the industry leader, the thought leader for that space, and then you can carry that forward.
Perfect. Perfect.
And I would
Yeah.
say,
Thank.
regardless of the business, unless you personally take on that role as the thought leader for that technology, you can have the coolest brand, you could have all the most amazing marketing, but unless you actually are pioneering that push forward, none of that will do any good.
Great. That's sage experience, and thank you for sharing that. So how do you balance your personal and your professional life, or do you, based on all your success that you've had? Sounds to me like you've got, we'll talk about your challenges in a minute, but how do you balance that?
Well, as I mentioned very early on, I started my first company in Illinois and then I sold it off. And what I learned from that is that unless you like we can all be employees, which is great. If you're honest job, honest work, honest pay, right? Yeah, but
Mhm.
if you're deciding to start your company, you should be structuring the company to where if you are not in the middle of it, it still should go and press on. It should still be
Right.
successful, even if you're not right in the middle of driving it. And that's a difficult leap. But that should be your intent from the beginning, because if you're not going to do that, you may as well go work for someone else, because you've become a slave to your job. You can enjoy it as much as possible, but if everything falls apart when you walk away, that's a problem. And it's not good for your investors, and it's not good for long-term growth for the company. So I would
Right.
say that, that has been the strongest learning point. The balance is that I am always actively putting into place people that are doing what they do best, to take the responsibilities off of what I need to be doing, so that I can focus on growing the business. I can do the things that I enjoy the most, and also have time for my family and loved ones, obviously.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up the call today?
No, this has been extremely great. I'm really excited about. I guess I do have something to share. I'm really excited about
Sure.
St. Louis. I think St. Louis truly represents a foundation for all kinds of technologies. We all know this. When it comes to
Right.
materials, engineering,
Right.
architecture, we have it all here. And what better place for us as a company to just really put down our roots in this community, this greater St. Louis area, to
Mhm.
establish a new material technology. And I take it very seriously that we are positioning ourselves as a mainstay, a job creator, a technology
That's
that
great.
you're going to see our materials in a lot of buildings, just like how you saw, great architectural pieces, in downtown St. Louis, and
Mhm.
material technologies like in the Eads Bridge that are still standing today. We hope that our
Right.
materials are going to be, and they will be, in some of these great architectural pieces here in the St. Louis area.
Yeah, and it makes me think of one of the stories when you watch one of the movies, and he talks about the little tiki umbrella that's on the drink, right? And he goes, some guy makes that, or some person makes that, and makes a gazillion of them, and don't know his name, don't know her name, don't know the logo, don't know this, don't know that, but people have probably seen your products everywhere, but just don't really know what they are, because what's important to you is the success of the performance of the product, not it's, XYZ widget company, and you're the CEO, rockstar CEO of it. So that's a
I
great, I
appreciate
like your
that.
humility about, hey, had to keep things running during COVID. So I picked up, the Amazon Flex driver role. I mean, we got to all stay in business. So thank you for
Hey, and
sharing
I
that.
actually have a badge. I delivered over 5,000 packages through the pandemic. And so, hey, if you don't want to do a gym membership or something, I highly recommend it. It was a great experience, actually.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Well, as we wrap up here, let's tell someone about your ideal customer, though you went through that because they're seeking you out. Um, but go ahead and tell us again about your company and the best way for someone to get a hold of you.
Yeah, if you type in structurally engineered bamboo, or obviously the company is called Renutech, Renuteq. We're very easy to find. And, the best way is just to send an inquiry through the website. Hey, I've got
Mhm.
this project, let me know. And someone will get back to you very quickly. One of the areas we really focus on as a manufacturer, we support whoever it is, whether it's an architect or engineer, with design assist. We turn quotes and things very efficiently and quickly. And we have a
Mhm.
very strong kind of R&D division within the company that we can generate a lot of drawings, shop drawings, and things like that to get the project going. And so, yeah, I would certainly appreciate people reaching out. We would schedule tours from our facility, because it is, like I said, the most advanced structural
Yeah.
engineered bamboo manufacturing company
Yeah.
and infrastructure in the world, essentially
Yeah.
making these structural products. So I would welcome people, if they want to learn more about the company, to potentially schedule a tour. Certain things are proprietary, obviously, but we can share quite a bit. And we're really happy to be on your show, and I really appreciate the opportunity, Mike.
Well, thank you again for being on the Great Business Stories of St. Louis. And we're glad that we came across you because it's a great and interesting story. And it's great to know St. Louis is on the map for it. I'll never look at bamboo again the same, but I want to thank you for doing that. And I'll be probably the first one that signs up for a tour coming up.
That sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good rest of your day.